and it's my pleasure to introduce Derek Mossman-Knapp and Pilar Miranda. They are husband and wife and co-founders of Vigno and the Garage Wine Company. And is Pilar joining you, Derek? Has she run off into the vineyards?
She's stepping in. Sorry, she'll 2 seconds here.
Well, great to see you as always, and thank you for joining us. So, do you want to start just by introducing yourself, Derek, and explaining your background and your work with Old Vines before we then go on to talk about the announcement that we're here to do today, which is to announce the IWSC Viticultural Research Grant for a project that's very close to your heart, and which is going to be focused on old vines in Chile. So start by introducing yourselves first.
Sorry, let me introduce Pilar here. You're
Hi,
going to move closer, you're going to be smaller. Okay. We began a project 2001 in the garage hobby, and I'm not here to speak of that, but about 2009 or 10, we helped form MOVI, which was the Movement of Independent Vintners, and it was the first time that a smaller kind of collective began in Chile. And it is, I think it was consequential that 4 of those partners were producers of Carignan. So the lunch club of winemakers who made Carignan that eventually formed Vigno was given a bit of impetus because there was a group that had begun. In Chile, we speak of asociatividad, which this is kind of the synergy of working together. And I think it's very appropriate in the, how do you say, in the context of this conference, that's exactly what this is all about, the way we think of it. In the end, this idea of forming a collective around the variety of Carignan that was, how do we say, it was kind of not understated, it was underappreciated. No, it was probably used to brighten up some wines, and people didn't talk about that. But it was, you know, Maule is today becoming even fashionable amongst the hipsters, as is Itata further south. But 15 years ago, Maule was where you made bulk wine, and where we didn't talk about Maule, even though to this day it's half of the wine produced in Chile.
Yes, it's the most planted region in Chile.
Sorry, my wife Pilar. Yeah.
Hi, Pilar. Lovely to meet you. Pilar, could you move forward a little, because you keep disappearing into your background?
Well, I'm a little bit tiny, so I change a few things.
Fantastic. Okay, and so basically the context is Chile, of course, one of the world's top wine exporting countries, very successful global wine brands, and a kind of, I think it's fair to say, an image of mostly, well, predominantly international varietals, with obviously the exception of Carmenere, but international varietals, and certainly in the UK seen as like a great value producer, rather than known until more recently for the more artisanal side of production. So there's definitely a link, isn't there, between the premiumization of Chilean wine with this, until recently, lesser told story of history and tradition, the link to the obviously the history with the Spanish settlers and the Jesuit missionaries and so on. So this is a story that you and your associates in Movi and then in Vigno were very concerned to make more prominent. That's right, isn't it?
Yes, I think Vigno is a very interesting example, because without being overly critical, when you speak of the international success, and you use the word brand, and often we speak of brand versus land, so that the early model was that large companies or growing companies would have a brand that people would follow that brand. And if they wanted Chardonnay, they would go here for it. And if they wanted Cabernet, they'd go there for it. And that was kind of the thinking for many years, I think, for a lot of people in the Chilean wine trade. And of course, fine wine of consequence comes from land, not brand. And what you need to do, or what the intention of Vigno has been, was to create a category around place or site, and then all of the partners help to fill that category. But it had to be in that order. So it was land, not brand. And I think that's been really important. I think the growing companies have learned and have adapted to this. Remember that Vigno is not just small artisanal producers. The growers would be much smaller growers than we're used to in Chile. But Miguel Torres, De Martino, I'm not going to name everyone, but this is a wonderful balance of large and small that learned to work together. It was quite something to put it all together back in that day, because the large of the corporate think in a certain way, and of course the small think in a different way. And it was really quite something when we all came to the conclusion, or the idea, that this wouldn't be a seal, wouldn't be a certification on a bottle, but this would be how do you say, like a DOC, I suppose we could say, but it was larger than your brand. It was Vigno by Garage, it was Vigno by Miguel Torres.
Common brand in the end.
Yeah. See, and it was quite something that the larger partners did that. Miguel Torres, the man who runs his grandfather's company, was in Chile running the Chilean operation then. And it was people like that, Pablo Morende, who were of the other thinking, who came and said, yes, this is the way we need to do this. We have to all be behind this. And what came with that was we had to, how do we say, police ourselves. We had to certify the vineyards were old. They were old. They were in they were bushhead. They were dry farmed. We heard you speaking in the previous session. This is all dry farmed by the laws of Vigno. And 2 years to release. Kind of simple set of rules that we police ourselves too, but that was the basis of the beginnings of Vigno.
And so you started Vigno in 2011, and it's specific to Maule. That's right, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, and even a smaller section than Maule itself, where it is dry farmed. And today we are 70 or 85% Carignana. It's around the variety of Carignan. And what else goes in the bottle has to fit the same rules of being old and dry farmed and in bushhead.
And can you just tell anyone who's not so aware, what's it like in Maule, where your vineyards are? And how did Carignan come to be planted there? And why did you think this project needed to be done? Sorry, 3 questions. We've traveled. Yeah, we traveled in the last little while, and we've realized there is Carignan in other places in the world, and that they are very curious to how we make a wine based around it, because it suffers mildew. It's a tough variety to grow. For some reason, we have God's earth to grow it. I think it is very dry. I think it's well protected. Many times you speak of Chile having the ocean, the mountains, the desert, and the ice kind of protecting it, but there is a sense of very dry conditions and very well protected. What was the second part? How did Carignan come to be planted in Maule?
It comes earlier, but it is planted a great deal in the 1940s after a large earthquake in 1939. And it was considered a way of making the pipeños, the country wines, more interesting. So if they were simple wines, they needed a little more acid, a little more structure, and a little more color to be more serious wines, to be more valuable wines. And those were 3 things that Carignan brought. And I think, to be honest, with a smile, I say that Carignan was also a good producer. It had a good yield. Yeah. So the experiment worked. Once the mildew was sorted out, it worked. Where many of the Vigno projects are, frost can be a factor. It's kind of interesting to think of the world we live in today, that we have wines that are below 13 alcohol. that's a very that's a very interesting circumstance. It really is a very special place for this. Remember that we are on the coastal range of mountains that Laura speaks of, the Andes, and much of Chile. The influence is the original set of mountains in South America, which were the coastal range, which were the original come up from the ocean floor. You want to answer the third
Yeah,
part?
important. I think the Carignan is a tremendous value in genetic diversity. It's great, very, very well adapted in the soils, like Mediterranean variety to the climate. All vines very resistant to the different condition of rains during these years and what's going to happen in the future with the climate change. And they have a great expression. We're being tasting and analyzing wines, Carignan from Italy, Spain, France, and the expression of the Chilean Carignan is fantastic. So I think we have to keep that and show to the rest of the people.
Yeah. And it's fair to say that this Vigno collective that you not exactly scrambled together, but, it was pretty tough getting this collective together and working out the terms of engagement. And it's not, as you say, necessarily a seal, but each company signs up and basically commits to a kind of a shared charter of quality standards and viticultural practices based on predominantly old bush vine, predominantly Carignan, that must be old vine, bush vine from Morlaix, and they each produce a wine under this kind of the Vigno collective label. And actually it's been a real exercise in sort of unity across the different parts of Chilean wine production. Is that fair to say? Because
absolutely. It's been revolutionary in the sense that we visit the farms, the group, and share how the viticulture has been done and the problems that have been faced, etc., in a way that I don't think anyone else in Chile does. I think
it's a very open group, and you share the good and bads. And also we have involved a university that it's responsible to check that the farm is under all our own rules. Like, it's an external institute that check that there is dry farming and is in the territory and follow all the rules that we impose.
And you've been rewarded with this recognition naturally and internationally for both the efforts in preserving this viticultural heritage and biodiversity, but also for the quality of the wines. I first came across Vigno through an article by Peter Richards, the noted master of wine, and these wines have actually they're premium, they're highly distinctive, and they sell at a high price. And this allows, do the growers know
yes,
what is happening to the if you like the grapes, that how their grapes are being received?
We have to integrate them, so we have to pass the news too. And absolutely, they are distinctive wines, and I think that if the impact is all around the chain, growers, the price, the quality, the writers, the critics, and I think that we have to keep working in tell the people, the consumers, what's going on here. So the news is spread and keep it alive, these wines.
Yeah, I think you have to put yourself in the shoes of a critic. I've just seen Alder and someone else here saying things. I think for the critics, if you come to a country like Chile and you sit down with a company and you taste through the pyramid of things versus coming into a valley where 15 people have gotten together to make a wine around a similar thing, which would you rather taste? Which is the better way to organize tastings? Well, I think the second clearly wins because it's much more interesting intellectually, sensorially. And I think what we have to learn as the Old Vine Conference to take it beyond Vigno is we must gather the old vines of the world together to be tasted instead of always falling back into the wines of wherever, fill in the blank model, because in the end, old vines do have a lot
in common.
Yeah,
right?
Do you know, it's a really good point in that there's almost this category of imagination when it comes to wine, of, you know, more lateral connection, we can see can be very powerful. And you see it with volcanic wine, for example.
Yes.
You could even argue that the whole natural wine growth is, you know, those wines are united by a certain focus on philosophy and intent, you know.
Yeah. Hence the success of raw. Absolutely.
Yeah.
We were just in Spain with Norrell, who's done something.
Norrell Robertson, Master of Wine.
Done something similar to what Pilar and I have done with Sharon. And in the end, there's a lot of comment, but in the end, we should be working together. Absolutely.
So, and I know you've got some images to give us an idea of what you do, and you know, the vineyards and what you're working with. But then also, I wanted to make sure we've got time to talk about the next stage in the development for Vigno and the learning and value that you're looking to share with other regions of Chile. Do you, how do you want to do it? Do you want to show your slides first?
I don't have slides.
Oh, don't worry, that's all right. Sorry.
Apologies.
Sorry.
No, but you know what I can do? I can send that to you. Apologize to all. I'll send that to you, and you can publish it on the website.
No problem. I mean, essentially, so Mole is kind of it's almost a bit of a backwater, isn't it? It's very rural, very isolated, rather beautifully stark landscapes, very old bush vines.
Yes, and many of the farmers are, how do they say, like 360-degree farmers. Yeah. They still grow wheat, they grow vegetables, they have a little bit of livestock. They have what they need to be sustainable as a family or as a community. You know, there's a mill that grinds the wheat. I mean, literally the machine that goes around today behind a Massey Ferguson diesel that does the wheat, it used to clearly be run with a steam engine. These people are cutting wheat with a scythe. I mean, this is very old style agriculture, and it is the same spirit that they treat the vines. Yes. No, most of this is still done by horse. There is innovation coming with more regenerative ideas and different thinking, but all of that has to be applied very locally.
I think the key is work together, like sharing the knowledge within the more scientific or viticulture area that we can express to them, and also respect the work they've been doing for years and years and generations. And there are many things that they do in a really correct way. They don't know why, the physiology behind that, but it's very well done. So I think that when you connect both, it's very, very powerful.
Yes, that's something I hear a lot, Pilar, in that actually good practices come about initially because of a kind of frugality, of a kind of survival-driven frugality where you just don't mess up the land because that's all you've got. And actually your skill, and it's a kind of accidental craftsmanship, you know, or it's actually deliberate craftsmanship, but it's accidental art. But it's all driven by a kind of a frugal attentiveness to being a really good farmer. And this is something that we see a lot, and we see it a lot in the survival of old vines all around the world. And I just wanted to move on to talk about the next stage for Vigno. So the IWSC, International Wine and Spirits Challenge, basically dedicates each year a sustainable wine grant through the Old Vine Conference to support grassroots non-profit collectives who have proved that they can do really good work with old vines, and who need and could do with, you know, just some support to actually develop their plan and to be able to increase their impact. And so I'm really delighted that for this year, the IWSC has awarded their Old Vine Conference grant to a project that Vigno is going to be undertaking with the University of Chile and other advisors. So, I mean, essentially, the concept of this project is to deepen and share the learnings of Vigno for the benefit of other old vine regions in Chile. And we were talking earlier with Laura and also some of the questions from the audience about how in Argentina, Laura was saying, look, there's a lot we just don't know. You know, we could do with more insight and more research. And this is an example actually of one of these projects being undertaken. So do you want to tell us a little bit about that and what the elements of that project will involve?
Yeah, I think we're going to focus in 4 areas. I'm going to read them to make it clear, but the idea is it's kind of have a spectrum of an idea from the point of view of the critics, growers, and partners of Vigno. So how they meant to them, how it's been this journey of 10 or more than 10 years in Vigno. That's going to be the first point. We want to include also more financial analysis of the impact, the price of the grapes, the increase of sales, the positioning of the brand, and also if that was expressed that it is in a different price or higher price of the wine when it's exported to the world. We want to include a more scientific area about analysis of the wines of different years, so we can see the typification or more chemical analysis, the wines during these 10 years. So we're going to have 2 or 3 vintages, so we can see the difference in these 10 years of interpretation of the winemaking and the terroir. And also maybe we can include some information about the comparison with Cariñanas from other countries. That could be very interesting. So you can have different drivers for different areas of production.
The reason we're working with the University of Chile is they did work in 2012 and again in 2014. So we can do like a comparative analysis. And from 12, the 12 vintage to today, the spirit of these wines has really come into its own to, I think, better to reflect the place. In 12, there was still a few of the partners with oak and other things, as if this was a fine wine that needed to be made in a certain way. I think it's going to be interesting that comparison. And the fourth? And
the fourth is the connection that we're talking with a few colleagues. That's Vigno's being very successful in what we do. So the idea is how we can replicate this with different areas of variety. And it's a new group named El Maule that is based on País. So the idea is promote the variety of País. And we're just seven companies at 7 projects starting this, but the idea is kind of based on Vigno, how we can do with the País. And I think that it's quite young, 2 years old, more or less, but I think it's a start to grow and have more energy. And I think that could be also how we can use the Vigno experience in another spectrum, variety, growers, area, whatever you want to expose.
It's interesting because the País and the Cariñanas have always gone together. You know, there's a symbiotic relationship there, and there is a lot of País that isn't getting out or isn't being made into fine wine, and there's a tremendous potential for it. Ask a hipster in Brooklyn, and they'll tell you all about País, which we need to make that connection.
And of course, you've also made a really lovely País under the Revival collaboration with Frischne Kubstik. So we'll be working with University of Chile with Dr. Álvaro Peña, a very noted leader in enology, Dr. Mariona Gil Cutiela, Professor Marcela Medel, and you're also working with Alejandro Rivas, whose interest is on the business side, how actually all of this work in the vineyard is then translated into increased value in the market. So we are undertaking this project through the University of Chile. And as I said, what I love about this is that it includes also the evaluation of the wines. So starting from the very early years of the project, when you knew you had these old vineyards, but you had this instinct that, look, they weren't really being treated, and the wine even being made in a way that really expressed the ultimate potential and the distinctive personality of these old vineyards. So over the 10 years or so of Vigno, you feel that you've actually really evolved an ideal style for expressing the personality of these vineyards. And you're going to be analyzing, through the collaboration with the university, both sensorial and other analyses on what's actually happening in the wines, as well as interviewing the farmers and the other stakeholders to understand what it took for them to engage, what the challenges are, and actually then how to make this, what are the factors in success. Because, and I think this is really interesting when we consider the question, we had a question in the earlier session, Derek and Pilar, from Robert Piet, who was asking about, are there any scientific research into the fact that old vines produce better quality wine? And Robert, here's an example of live, just about to start research. And what we will be doing at the Old Vine Conference is that we will be sharing the progress and the results of the research, and our aim is to be able to launch this with, and we will be launching this with a tasting, so that we can actually make all the learning real. So we have the research that backs up our instinct about the wine, and then we will have lovely wine when we come to actually share the results of the research. So
absolutely. I think one of the things that's been seen already is that when you have old vines, you have lignified raspon, you have stems that you can use in the winemaking, which in a sense is kind of making a wine not just more true to place, but more true to plant, and not, but French oak or whatever else is coming. And I think that's one of the things that we're going to see in this study, that many more people are using, taking advantage of these lignified stems, and that has had an impact in the type of tannins in the wines.
Yeah, and how do you think that initiatives like this, such as Vigno and Almole, are now seen and considered within the Chilean wine industry? Are they seen as the future? Have you got, broad engagement?
I think some, but not, I would say personally, not enough. I think there's still people resisting, still people holding on. But I think there are many other places in Chile that are doing things similar to this. I think there's a certain kind of underdog sense to Vigno, and I think that was part of the reason it worked. Part of the reason Movi worked was there was no other way to do it. We don't have the same marketing advantages. We don't have the same budgets. So we've got to be more creative.
I think that we need more people to believe in this kind of collaboration or groups of projects that promote specific things or work for a specific goal. I think we need more groups like this in Chile. Absolutely. We need to convince people. I think they're very more and more open, looking at what's going on, but I think we need more action. Absolutely. I
go to New York at the end of the month, and it's the first time an event is being put on by Wines of Chile and Movi jointly, 50-50. And the idea, the theme of the conference is size no, but sight matters, is the title. You'd have to see the graphic. But it is very interesting that is happening. I mean, it's a very effective thing when one speaks to the wines of others, because one believes in them, because they're made in the same neighborhood in a similar way.
Yeah.
I'm not sure when the marketing people are going to figure out why it is, but when I speak very positively of a wine of Miguel Torres,
yes,
it's very, very effective. And that's what we need to learn in this group as we travel around the world, as we begin to work together as Old Vines. It's not us versus them. We're forming a kind of collective around this conference.
Yes. And I've actually put a link in the chat for people who would like to know more about the Vigno collective, and the members. I mean, and as you say, the members are very varied, but and also include some of the you know, the large and most well-known wineries of Chile, like De Martino, like Concha y Toro, and La Postol, of course, as well as you know, much smaller, I guess more artisanal wineries. But Rosa Kruger, the great Rosa Kruger, who's one of the leaders and pioneers in championing old vines, she said in our very first conference, there's something very unifying about approaching wine through an old vine lens. And I think what you've talked about and described has really shown that. And I'm really delighted that we're going to be able to actually almost quantify and roadmap and benchmark the reasons behind this success, so that you can, first of all, help it to continue, but then also for it to be really a roadmap for expanding this type of program in Chile and probably beyond as well. So yeah, so I just wanted to thank you both, and obviously, of course, to thank the IWSC for their collaboration with us, and all the team that you've got together ready to get started at the University of Chile, a fantastic university, an amazing team of experts. And it's wonderful to, I think this is the first I've heard of a project like this actually being researched with this scope in old vines in Chile. So really, you know, congratulations on you know, being able to make this happen. And we look forward to hearing from you on the progress as we move forward.
Super.
Thank you very much. And we are
Thank
happy
you. Thank you,
develop
Derek
projects.
and Pilar.
Okay.
We'll keep in touch. Bye-bye.
Bye for now. Bye. Keep in touch. Right. Thank you so much. And if you'd like any more questions or updates on that, please keep in touch with us at the Old Vine Conference. You can either email my colleague, belinda@oldvines.org, or send us a message through oldvines.org website contact page. I'm